Hello, my friends. This is Sean Speak with Friends. And this is my friend Marvin. And I'm Sean. And this is the first installment of Sean Speak with Friends. I have a host of wonderful friends in the, I would say, self-development, consciousness, spirit field, creative field. And I'm super excited to talk with them about all sorts of great topics. And I'm super happy, Marvin, that you're here as my first guinea pig.
Happy to be of service.
Yeah, great. So, Marvin, would you just say, I don't know, a minute, something about yourself?
A minute. Hello, I'm Marvin. I'm Sean's friend.
Yes! I make myself excited. You're my friend.
The most important information. I'm friends with Sean, and if I'm not friends with Sean, I am a radical honesty workshop facilitator. But that's not all I do. I also make music, not on a professional level, more on a fun level, and I write books and blog posts. So I'm a workshop leader / writer who makes some music for fun.
I like that. No, another friend of mine, Sarah, she recently introduced me to a term that she had coined. She called it creative optimist. Like, like why focus on one thing? We can do many things and be optimistic that what we create kind of is for the betterment of the world, and not limit ourselves to thinking, I'm good at that, the world needs that, right? So we're creative optimists and we do all sorts of things.
Yeah.
I myself am also training to become a radical honesty trainer, and that's actually how we met, right? And,
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Remember, you said something like we hadn't met, and we met the first time around on a video call, and I had just gotten my mustache, and I was so happy that you had said something positive, like, oh yeah, okay, all is well.
Like I think the first thing I told you, you remind me of my uncle, who was also a musician, who had the same mustache and kind of the same hairstyle.
Great.
Back then, yeah. My friend and Uncle Sean.
Uncle Sean. Well, I'm used to being Papa Sean, so Uncle Sean is it's not a problem.
3 kids you have?
3 kids. That is something. You any plans? Kid plans?
Well, for the first time, it's like you're gonna hear it here first. New information. For the first time, a couple of days ago, I keep something I call a life purpose statement. It's not like a super fixed, once I come up with it, then it's carved into stone kind of thing, but more like a fluid, changing idea for my life. And I put a new subcategory, family, and I put in there for this year, speak about how to have kids, because I am in a 2-year relationship. I don't have kids, and I want to start the conversation more about this. I'm quite logical, and I have to have all the right information.
The right information.
But what I want to say is I have it on my radar. Yeah.
I like how you said speak about having kids. I imagine it reminds me about a thing that Brad Blanton, who is the should we say the inventor of radical honesty, or
the creative stealer who picked the right information and pastes them together into something called radical honesty.
Like a creative stealer. So we have creative optimists and creative stealers. So I guess it goes together.
He's the remixer behind radical honesty. So
the remixer and our non-guru guru, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did I mention him? Kids. No, speaking into existence. I remember like in the process of radical honesty, right? So what we learn is, first we learn to talk more honestly, about our body sensations, emotions, what happens, and maybe about past events that we haven't shared. And we do this in the course of workshops and trainings and stuff. And then we go and do completions with our family. So this is like the first big part. But then comes the part, so we're complete now, what we call complete, like we don't feel so burdened.
More or less, as much as
More or less.
possible.
We don't feel so burdened. We're not thinking about our grievances with past lovers and family so much anymore. And we now have energy to create. And that's like the second part somehow of this process. And I like very much, I mean, you mentioned the life purpose statement, right? So I imagine that we create a life purpose statement and then come up with projects and find out what projects really get a fire going inside or something, like measure with that, and then speak them into existence. I think that's the term. So you're speaking something into existence there. Better be careful.
Yeah, it's a good format though that I think works. I like to think that for whatever I want to create at some point or another, I need the support of other human beings to make something happen.
Then I remember you saying in a conversation we had that you were kind of going solo, flying solo very much, and that like you now going more into collaboration, if I see that correctly.
It's something I had to learn the more hard way, since I haven't had a creative mentor ever. And like the things I know about creation, I kind of self-taught them myself, but I was operating under the impression that I have to be like a creative, lonely genius, that like whoever does something great just sits at home alone for long enough until they became the next greatest writer or the next greatest musician. And I imagine I now learn more and more that that's not the way to go, which I didn't know. So I often thought that if I just do it long enough, just alone in the morning by myself, then something would be great. And I imagine I was missing the input from like well-intentioned friends who know what they are doing and who have like a good will for me to make this creative project happen.
So that can take the form of you like just getting support or actually projects happening together, right?
Yeah, both.
You come up with an idea and you're like, let's really do this together. Or it's more like we have another round where we meet, where we talk about creative projects, right? And there obviously it's more about everybody goes back. I do music and you do music and we do our thing and you write, but we inspire each other and we share about the process and maybe books that inspired us. Yeah, we have this book that we both read, Nowhere, where it's that instead of saying genius, it says Scenius, being part of a scene. Somehow, what is it like? Still
show
like
your work.
Show your work, right? Yeah.
Austin Kleon.
And you're working on a book too. Like, is that something that you want to talk about, or is that still under the covers?
I do want to talk about it, and as soon as you ask, I felt a little bit of tightness here, and I contracted my legs a bit, like feeling like a deer in the headlight. Now I should say something about it, and I will. So I have been working on writing more. Like I picked up writing as a creative outlet, I would say 7-8 years ago, with more or less intensity. And 4 months ago, I started the idea of a new project, which means I take 2 or 3 hours every day writing and sometimes reading and compiling more information. I have been doing that now since October. And I still don't have a clear idea what I'm actually writing. So it loops back to some hybrid form of telling the truth or speaking more clearly in order to not be so stuck in stories. Then to creativity, whatever that means. And I come around, this is really weird for me. I don't even know how to put that into words, but to this kind of spiritual angle, like, the philosopher Alan Watts. Yeah. So I also keep coming back in the process to this like thought, who are you really? And whenever I start writing about it, I feel like a complete imposter and that nobody cares. That like, what's the point of saying you are not your thoughts, you are your awareness? So, and whenever I get there, I stop and I start like a new angle. And then I come back to that point. So that has to be in there somehow, that like, yes, you're not just your thoughts and your name, also a bunch more. But whenever I get to that point, I tell myself, I really don't have anything to say about it. And now with this new idea to collaborate more, I think I will just quote other people and just put their information in and say, here's what they say. Problem solved.
Get the professionals.
Exactly. Have somebody who actually knows what they are saying. Yeah. And, yeah. Now I'm taking a deeper breath. That felt good speaking about this. So, and some days I actually want to talk more about that for 1 extra minute. Some days I imagine like the best possible book I could write would be to go as much as I can into my own story and to show like what worked for me, for my own experience, truthfully, or what experts say in quotes, something like that, but like my own real story. And then I often contradict myself by thinking, who cares? Like, you're 34, it is not meant to be an autobiography. This is meant to help somebody else. So I'm experiencing this conflict of not knowing how to move along or which approach to stick to.
Well, but it's interesting. You say, who cares, right? Like, this is a double-edged thing, right? Like, it's good to have that on the radar somehow, like to create something that actually speaks to people, that like it's not just I sometimes have this idea about musicians. There's some music that I would call therapeutic, and I'm like, fucking go to a therapist instead of spewing out this into the world, right? But if you have that too much on the radar, like only think about that, like where's the authenticity, where's your fun? Like, and for me, that's like when I think about our talk now, of course, like I've been thinking of doing this format for a while, and I'm like, yeah, who cares? Me talking to my friends. Like, but the reality is also I like to do it, and for me that's the other question, is like, will you be able to stick it through? Is it like, are you passionate about it? So I guess you need kind of the balance between who cares, but I care.
Yeah. A couple of years back, I wrote a book in German. It's called, if I would translate it roughly, What They Didn't Teach You, or like what you didn't learn in school. And for that book, I was really angry. So at that point in time, I just I just quit my corporate job in New York City. And I thought, this is it. Like, this is no more corporate. I'm going to do my own stuff. So I had this like real drive. And then I was really focused to just, that has to be chapter 1. You're not going to live forever. Chapter 2 is You're Not Your Mind, and bam, bam, bam. And I was really, it's not very well written, because it's just like me telling people a bunch of stuff what they should do. but at least I was much quicker. And some people read it, they tell me it's great, like that the content is great, but how it's written is questionable. I agree, it is questionable. Like, and now I'm experimenting with this, just tolerating changing the angle and having like 300 pages without knowing if any of them will go in. But at the same time, I tell myself there has to be an end to this if it ever has to be a finished something. But what I started doing, also inspired by you, by our conversation, is take individual pieces that are in there and either put them just as a Facebook post, 3 sentences, or a blog post, or make a video about them. And then here, if somebody has something to share about it, then read some feedback or some comments. I think that's the better way than having 5,000 pages and then having to decide alone which are the 100 pages worth publishing.
That I guess that comes back to the whole idea of the lone genius that just elaborates at home and then comes out with, I don't know, like this grand masterpiece, and or in nowadays we're in so connected, like to actually already engage with the audience, whatever, like, like early enough.
And here exactly in this point, I have the conflict of like two schools, so to speak. So there's on one hand, I see this new show your work, Austin Kleon, find your creative artistic voice kind of thing. But on the other hand, I've read people like Stephen King, Stephen Pressfield, and others who would never show their novel before it's not done. And they say it's counterproductive. I don't really know. That's a hard thing for me that I haven't had a mentor. I don't have firsthand experiences. So I'm trying to find my way in what actually works for me. Yeah. So like it's they will I forgot the word. Oh, I think I was hanging there for a second.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so some people say if that they would be too you heard it, yeah. So it was the connection. I don't know the word.
Yeah.
Like if you can be influenced too much in one direction, if you
Yeah.
share it too early.
Well, I know that there's some, like I know from myself from a musical side, and I know also other composers speaking about it, to say that when they're in the process of creating, at some point they stop listening to other music. And I know in myself that too, like it's great to be inspired, but then to really find my voice, there's a time when like outside influences, then maybe not listening to something too similar, right? Like listening to something completely different where you don't get sidetracked, or reading something, not another self-help book, but reading a novel while you write the self-help book, right? Yeah. But I imagine it's like a flowing thing, like getting, yeah, I guess it's a tough call. I think there is no clear answer. It's like, but I imagine it's like a counter movement right now, right? Away from this, oh, I need like closing up at home, you know, whether it's a creative project or it's a spiritual path, it's similar, right? Also on the spiritual path, it's like, there's the old school, let's call it old school, like just like be in the cave and meditate for 5 years and fucking get enlightened, right? And nowadays more and more people are realizing, oh, what about trauma? What about our social, like we're social beings, we need to be in connection, and only if we are in connection and take good care of that, right, in relationship or speaking with each other, then our body gets relaxed, and we actually arrive in a way where then these spiritual disciplines actually work, whereas beforehand you were dissociating or something. And I think like actually both are similar, right? Like you could also be kind of going off on a tangent in the creative process because you're just not connected, right? You don't feel well, so you write an angry book.
Yeah, and I think what it comes down to for me, I have recently been calling myself a recovering single child. So like I have a much older brother. He didn't live at home for long, so I haven't experienced him from when I can think, because then he moved out when I was 3, was over 18. So I imagine I have this single child syndrome of sitting in my room alone and just playing and having to do stuff alone. And for me, maybe the sharing way, I mean, it also comes down to what is it that I actually want out of the creation? Is it about creating something that is going to be like, that's the creation, the book, and it's a bestseller, or do I want to have fun in the process and connect with other people and be interested and enjoy everything? And if I do that, can I still make something great? And I don't know. I don't have first-hand experience. I would like to think that it's possible to enjoy with other people and still put something out. And maybe it's harder to cooperate if you write a novel. I imagine that would for me be more a self-closed down thing, but like if I'm creating something on more authentic relationships, communication, it almost has to have other people's opinions in there.
Yeah.
It depends on like the product and the.
But I like what you said, like this. That's a thought I had this morning too. That is it product oriented or process oriented, right? Yeah. But that, to me, that really is important, because I think like so much of our thinking is like this product goal oriented thing, right? like not only in the creative process, but also on the spiritual path, like enlightenment, right? Or everywhere else, building the house or whatever, right? Like I will be happy when I have that, and when I finally have that. And so to me, actually, the process-oriented thing is the answer to so many things. And of course, like where I think the goal comes in and has the right place is to propel us forward, to give us energy, to give us a direction, right? So we have a goal in mind, and that helps us to really do our thing and be more clear about what we want to do, and not just chill on the couch and watch Netflix, right? Like get over our Schweinehund, as we say in German. I don't know what the Schweinehund
for me, is like the Schweinehund for me is to actually allow myself to sit at home and watch Netflix. Because for me, and that's very interesting, I imagine that's a typical thing for like where different folks need a different approach. I have been goal-oriented all my life. I was like, screw the process. Who enjoys the process? Who enjoys the journey? We have to get there. It's not about like what you see on the journey, the end. And you can never watch Netflix at home. So for me, I imagine this just spending more time in the process and enjoying it, including the frustration of not knowing where to go to. It might be curative for me to become whole again, instead of just in like a scale. If it's a super goal oriented without any love for the process, then maybe, So I actually just allow myself to watch more Netflix these days. I judge myself for it. I sometimes watch one episode of something while I have lunch, because I think that's something I really should never do. And now I'm just
like you really should do that.
I mean,
man, you know, like that's so unspiritual, you know, like you really better be careful there.
Okay, so sorry.
Yeah, really, my child. Don't you know the bad vibes that come out of the computer? Hey, just like, I mean, we mentioned it before, and I imagine some people that watch this might know, but others don't know what radical honesty is and what, like, and I imagine you're a little bit of an authority here. And so would you be willing to kind of just share in a short roundup what it is and what it is for you?
Yeah. Well, for me, I want to actually start with how I came to such a thing. It was, I come from a background where I continuously pretended to be fine when I wasn't, to be more interested than I actually was, where I lied to my partners, to my bosses, to my family, pretty much to everybody. So I had this huge construct of lies and like thinking how I should be in the way, and suppressing sadness, suppressing anger, suppressing all feelings pretty much, and just thinking I should be a certain character, like a small little way. And that, when I was 26, led me to a lot of frustration and depression, up to the point where one day I just quit a job in South Africa, but I thought I have to go back to New York City. So I went home to my parents for like 2 days to fly to New York, and I couldn't move physically. I was collapsing on the floor, unable to move. My physical body really collapsed on the floor at 26. But in my mind, I thought that's weakness. You have to be stronger than that. So I continuously thought I have to be a certain way, and pretended and lied to live up to an ideal image, which I picked up in different pieces. Some ideas of how a white German man has to be in order to get what he wants. And then I realized that there was this crucial point for me in my life where I reached actually the job that I thought would be my dream, which was executive assistant in New York City for a huge German company. I had this 2 screens, Central Park view, high salary, like connections, everything. And I was really unhappy. So I felt like in the goldfish glass, so to speak, that like I was just thinking. I couldn't even see anything with my eyes. Just everything was prefigured out. Yeah. Like everything had to have purpose, like has to lead to some creation of profit. So like I didn't see with my eyes. I saw with like pre-made ideas pretty much. And I made that, I don't know how I made it, would be a longer story, but I decided that at that time I was listening to like a lot of Alan Watts, watching videos of nature, and I got sad always when I was hearing him speak or watching videos of people climbing mountains. I had this longing for something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I somehow decided that I don't want to live that life. And I want to do something else. And that's how I knew radical honesty before. I didn't invent it. Like I know it now for 9 years. It's a book written by Brad Blanton. You mentioned his name, which comes from Gestalt therapy, bioenergetics, Willem Reich, and some psychedelic experimentation of his into that one book. And I came to it by being a major liar and pretender and having experienced how unhappy I make myself that way, how superficial my relationships were, and how I was just stuck in my mind, in my thinking. That's how I got to it. So what it means for me in the shortest possible way is to align communication and perception. So to say what is actually there, to speak about what I actually notice. Yeah? So how I feel in my body, what goes to my head, and what I see in the world. Yeah. So it's pretty much how you would be if you wouldn't stop yourself, so to speak. It's to become a bit more like children again. And there was this funny story. It happened 3 days ago. My girlfriend's sister has 2 kids. She has a 5-year-old boy. It's probably something you know from experience, I'm sure. There's a 5-year-old boy. He tried to call her on the phone 2 times in the evening. She saw it 20 minutes later. She called her sister back, and the sister said, he wanted to call you. He was so devastated and sad that you didn't pick up. But now he doesn't want to talk to you. He's watching TV. He doesn't care now. He'll call you another time. So like instead of being stuck onto something and then like, oh yeah, now I have to talk to her because I tried to say, I wanted to 20 minutes ago and now I don't want to. Now I want to watch this TV. So something like that, like become a bit more fluid again and not so driven by beliefs and how things should be, but be more with how things are first. And you mentioned today like spiritual practices a few times, and I imagine it fits in there somehow, because I like to say that the journey is lose your mind and come to your senses, which is quite vague, but it means to lose trust in your reactive thinking, the thinking that came from like growing up from school, the way you quickly react to stuff. So kind of lose trust in that and come back to here now. And from there, that's what you mentioned, use your mind more as a tool for creation. So you kind of learn to use what had been using you and the survival skills you learned in your environment. We all have some, if we know it or not, to put them to like a better use proactively. That's like the second journey. First, kind of lose reactivity, and then to proactive creation. And for me, it worked pretty well. I liked radical honesty. For me, it was a cure for being lying all the time.
And it helped you obviously to create a life that you enjoy more, I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I imagine not everybody who goes into this will become a radical honesty trainer and change their life around like that, but
no, you have to be quite obsessive to become a radical honesty trainer. Like you have to be a little bit crazy, extremist, and quite obsessive, I think.
Well, that's quite like they don't write that down in the application for that.
No, they don't, but they
Right.
yeah, no. Yeah, I feel good now. I actually I appreciate you for asking me, and I am aware that I went off on a little story about how I got there, and I'm aware that I left out 100 important pieces that would have made a more whole picture, that you understand it greater how much I suffered from lying, and yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I imagine your story is a good introduction, or like look where
Yeah,
you can get from where to where.
yeah.
Mm.
The hardest thing for me was that I had my dream job, and everybody in my environment said this is so perfect. Everybody. So every person who I talked to, every single person, except for one good friend, my friend Mark, he was the only one who said, "Well, if you don't like it, then quit." Everybody else said, well, "You reached the perfect thing. Like, why would you leave?" And then I actually questioned myself if I'm now going crazy, and I stopped at the pinnacle where life would go great, where I would have my super high money, New York City connections, everything. And I decided to move back to my parents, like my kids' room in a village in Germany. So I thought I'm crazy. At some point, I thought that was the wrong idea. Yeah, I don't think that anymore, though.
Well, I imagine it takes courage to stop something that gets so much approval of from society, and to say like no, whatever. Like if it might be the dream for others, but it's not for me. It's not working. And I imagine we all can go through that, and then to say like, I know this is not working. I don't know what is working yet. Like this in between state, right? Like this is not working, but like there's like an abyss or a dark space in between. Like Jesus going to the desert, or like,
Yeah,
and just to be like, I don't have the solution yet, but I will. I have to stop this, and I'm gonna go and try to find something new. And all the people are like, no, this is so wonderful.
yeah, and I think this is important. The actually stopping and having some faith. I imagine one of the most important things for me in life are kind of that you have an imagination, that you can see something bigger, or not bigger. That makes it like sounding like, oh, that's worse or better, but just something outside of what's currently there, and
Mm.
have like faith that what you want can be done and provided by you. And for me, it's, I don't know if I can say that, but like the way I actually, that rang true to me, I thought, well, if there is something like a higher power, if that power allows stuff like Coca-Cola to exist, I'm not saying it's all bad, but sugar and children and stuff. So if something like that can be there, or like even if there is like even worse something, then I can probably start writing a book that will also be supported by whatever is supporting all those other things. So for me, that made sense, because that's how my mind works. I had to have the comparison. Well, if the higher power, God, whatever here and now, whatever supports this, whatever, then well, I can write a book. And it's true. I think you have to sometimes quit things before you put new things in. So our friend Brad, he used to say, you sometimes have to jump without knowing where the security net is. And it's better if you jump with a bunch of friends like this. Everybody's scared, but you jump, and there will be some sort of next experience. And it was true for me. For me, it was actually, funny thing is, when I finally quit that job, 3 days later, it's so funny. I quit it. I didn't know what to do. 3 days later, I went to Facebook and I saw the advertisement for my first radical honesty workshop, where I met Brad actually. So I signed up for that while I was still in New York. Yeah, and then yeah. So I think things show up when we leave some of the old. No, sometimes it has to be some trust in that something will work out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sound like a religious man now, don't I? A little bit.
Well, I guess you've experienced some little miracles or something. I like this idea of miracles not being somebody walking on water or parting the ocean, or stuff like that, but more like true changes of heart, you know, like sometimes like somebody really changes, like you really do something new, you know, like because we're like robots so much of the time. And then it's like, it's kind of miraculous if something really new happens, right? Or if somebody really stands up for what they believe in, or go against the higher powers, or say like, look, I think that's miracles. I like what you said about standing with friends and shaking and jumping, you know, like, yeah, I imagine there's so much that could be different in the world, and that we could get frustrated about. I'm not even going to start going there, but what I find, especially in these times, it's so important to have these friends, right? Like, know what you stand for, and like have a bunch of people that kind of believe in sort of the similar things, or at least have their heart in a similar place, or at least, I don't know, are intent on speaking honestly and meeting each other honestly. Like that's for me like a big thing about this whole be it radical honesty or whatever, you know, like just like, hey, can we meet? Can we put our masks away? I even wrote like, you know, like,
yeah, what do you like about honesty? Especially the masks away. Like, so if people meet each other and tell the truth, what space does that create for you?
Well, it's different, two different things. Like one thing is like, I feel that through speaking the truth and through showing up more and sharing more honestly, like more connection happens in one-to-one or in a group, like, and very quickly this feeling of love can come up, and it's like, wow, you know, and I notice my body is tingling, and I smile and I get excited and I just feel good, right? And it's like, wow, we're in here together, even like through just a screen. And I know that with some friends and maybe with some partners, I used to know that, or with some like-minded people, I used to know that in other settings, but I didn't have any control over it, right? So I didn't have quite know when this secret happened. Like, yeah, when you're drunk, when you take drugs together, when you're at a great concert. So there's, or when you have sex, or at a nice family gathering. But it's out of my control, right? Like sometimes the heavens, the things fall in the right place, and it's like, and I feel good, right? And then I imagine I would then hold on to these activities, or these 1, 2, 3 people where it happens more. And I find that with radical honesty, like all of a sudden, like this depth of connection happens more and more people, right? And not only that, but also I kind of have the tools. I know how, like sometimes I manage, maybe sometimes I don't manage, you know, like sometimes I might still close up, but I'm not a victim to outer circumstances for feeling connected. So that's a big part. And for me, it also, I mean, for me, it comes in with the spiritual thing, because I've been on the spiritual path, if you would call it so, for a long while. And actually, I got to know about radical honesty through a friend of mine who is in my spiritual sangha, or was in my spirit, we were. And I realized, ooh, that's still like this honest connection between people, between human beings, was something that was kind of still a missing puzzle piece for me on the spiritual path. Like so much of that path is meditation and or doing all sorts of practices, or cleansing, right, or rituals, or contemplation, reading, or being in the presence of enlightened people and stuff. And this whole part of, ooh, you know what, like we're human beings, social beings, we need to be connected, right, is kind of left out. And it's not just that we need to be connected, but it's also that, like, at the same time, I saw these teachers that are kind of super enlightened, and then it comes out after 5 years, right, or 10, like that they were screwing around with their followers and abusing the money, and like that's like such a common theme. And to me, that has also been like, oh, what's happening there? And then I heard from Adyashanti, actually a teacher I very much like. He wrote a book. I forgot how it's called now. But that was more about like what to do after your first awakening, kind of like what practices are important to kind of stay, like you've had a few awakening experiences, been doing a lot of inner work and stuff, and now you're kind of changed, and you're more open to the world, what to do now, like, and a big part of that thing that he said was actually honesty. Oh, that's interesting, and the way he talks about it. So in German, the book is called Sein and Science, like as in being, but it's a bad translation in English. It's shit. Oh well, we'll come.
If it comes to you could just post it in the description of the
that's true
video, like in the link on YouTube.
And I enjoyed it very much because it's something that I had kind of seen too. Is like, oh, why is that so important? Because let's say your ego or your personality has kind of dropped away a little bit through some intense experiences. You can have that with drugs too, right? And then it always wants to kind of come back together. And you're a teacher, for example, you're channeling some of that energy, but like there's hundreds of beautiful women that look up to you, and of course, like this little seed of an ego comes in and fetches that up, and like, I'm the teacher now, right? Like puffing up the alpha male kind of thing. And I see that speaking honestly and like, as we say, like speaking out our role, like I'm pretending I want to be super funny now, like I want you to think I'm the greatest guy on earth and stuff like that. Wow, like even there. So it can be that you have no idea about spirituality, not interested at all in this shit, and just want to become a little more alive, get out of your head, and that's perfectly fine. And that's where radical honesty comes in. But even like if you've had a lot of work, done a lot of work, later on, it's just as important. And so that's a little bit of where I came from, where it's like, this is like, and I find like I've read about nonviolent communication and I've read some other honesty approaches, and I just didn't like feel like they were actually doable, whereas with radical honesty, I feel like, oh yeah, no, here we have some practice and we have a community, we have like, we try to actually bring it down into everyday experience. How can we speak honestly? So.
I like that. I appreciate you a lot for the last thing you said about distilling it into everyday experience, the community.
Yeah, so that's that. And that's like a little bit like what we're doing now, right? Like we want to meet honestly and at the same time share what's happening. I'm looking at my watch. I think we said like 45 minutes is a good time. And I think it's pretty much 45 minutes now. I'm like, I think the time is passing.
It went fast. Seems like shorter to me.
Yeah, notice I'm smiling.
I notice my lips are dry.
Yeah, I didn't like, I have a water standing here untouched. I'm glad I didn't make that coffee that I wanted to make because I would just like been dehydrated, which by the way, I use this Aeropress now, thanks to you and the inverted method.
Sales pitch, Aeropress Inverted Method, everybody. Best coffee at home for 30 euros.
Leave the very, very most important information to the end, right? Like I wrote
That's what we're actually here for Aeropress today.
No, it's like just a setup. Like you need to have good coffee.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're gonna wrap it up. So Marvin, your name is Marvin Schulz, and
Marvin Schulz, my name.
Right, and you can be found on the internet on the Marvin
You can
Schulz.
call him marvinschulz.com.
Amazing, you got the .com. You're a company.
Yeah, so cool, because there's like a famous soccer player and some like music producers and marketing guys, and I was quicker than all of them. That's when the goal-oriented mindset pays off. I have the .com domain.
Yeah, I just started a new page called seanspeak.net, unfortunately. Though I like net anyway, but com wasn't available. And yeah, I was thinking about getting Sean Green, like all sorts of things about thinking about names. But this Sean Speak has been in my mind for a while, and I like it. Now I have seanspeak.net, and I have Sean Speak with Friends. This here.
I like it. I like it.
Great, Marvin.
Well, cool first episode, yeah.
Yeah.
From now,
let's see where it goes. Oh man, you're frozen again. Yeah, Pierce. Ah, there you are.
Gone, but now I'm back.
Yeah, you were very still doing the namaste, amazingly still. It even looked like the video was frozen, but I think it was just your spiritual superpower.
Yeah, no, it was the power of attention and focus. So I just didn't move. I was melting into the here now experience. It wasn't a connection. That was pure. It was power of attention.
All right, Marvin. Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Ciao. Bye.